So at the end of the day, I would ask you and your listeners: do we want to solve this problem, or do we want to keep just arguing about it? And that's where I think this idea of compromise is so important. So I just wanted to get that point in, because these are not theoretical problems; they're real problems right on the ground.
So how do we fix that? What is the solution to this American schism?
The solution, I think, is demonstrated in our history. That is, at times when we've been divided, as this pendulum has swung back and forth, we've at times used what I call a secret sauce, a secret formula to move forward. And when we've managed to use these tools in the secret formula or the secret sauce, we've done pretty well. When we've abandoned them, like in the Civil War, we've had periods of terrible violence. So I think history has a lot to teach us. History can act as a salve for our wounds if we'd be willing to apply it. And to me, one of the dangers of where we are today, going back to a comment you made earlier, is not that we've never been divided, or maybe even that we haven't been more divided than this. The problem is that today, the elements of the secret sauce have been completely abandoned for various reasons, which I discuss at length and write about. But let me just, for your listeners, tell you what it is. I mean, what is this magic formula that I'm talking to? I think it's three elements, three very different elements. And I'm going to simplify for the purposes of our conversation. Of course, it's more complex, and I think, whether it's the book or my other writing goes into this in more detail. But to simplify the three things, the first one is a fundamental commitment, a willingness to operate in a problem-solving empirical mindset where data matters. If we don't agree and look at data, if we refuse what we used to call facts, we'll never solve the problem. And so the first thing is recognizing that empirical information matters, and there is a constitution of knowledge that we've built that's valuable. So, this empirical problem-solving mindset, I would say, is the first one. And I'll go through all three, and we can talk about any one of them. So that's been part of the secret sauce, relying on a problem-solving framework based on reason and data. The second secret sauce element, what I sometimes call empathetic listening, but it's really the type of thing that we were talking about before with political debates or debate clubs. The idea of not giving just lip service to another point of view, but really understanding other points of view from the perspective of the reason and the facts that support it, like getting under the skin of other points of view. And unless we see today, it's too easy to demonize people who have another point of view and immediately hate them or call them the enemy. That's not helpful. The secret sauce requires us to really understand them and to be sympathetic in that way. And that's a tool that at times we've used and at times we've abandoned. The third one, by the way, and this is all the third element of the secret sauce, is an understanding going into the democratic process that by definition, for it to work, it requires compromise. And so up front that you won't get everything you want, but you can't let perfection be the enemy of the good. If you're not willing to not get everything you want, because invariably we have to compromise. Like going back to our example, the Constitution was a compromise. There were many people in that room that were abolitionists that didn't want to tolerate the lack of abolition of slavery. But to get it to move forward, they had to compromise. And I think that's the third part. So if we think about those three things, and I speak about this a lot, I think all three have become almost, completely rejected today. I don't think we operate in an empirical environment. I don't think we listen to each other in the way I think is required. And I don't think we're willing to compromise. So that's why I think the work that I've tried to do in my research, I think is relevant, because it shows there's a way to proceed here that's productive, but we seem stuck in this unproductive way of doing things. We don't let go of this kind of demonization and tribalism, as you've called it. And I think it's going to hurt us. I think we risk not being able to bestow this incredible democratic republic to our kids. And, despite all of our flaws, I do think that the democratic republic, our American history, is the best example of self-government in the history of the world. And I think we owe it to not only our children and the next generation, but to the planet and the world. We owe it to promulgate it, to continue it. And if I think the only way is to think about those three elements. Now, maybe there are other elements as well, but I think those three are certainly worthy of thinking through.
100%. One of my favorite terms is radical empathy, and I think it's something we should always be striving for. Last question. What advice would you give to young people, the next generation of Americans, the Gen Zers such as myself, who are trying to be successful and navigate their place in today's political climate?
Well, this is a great question. And I speak to students often, young people. I think it's so important for young people to get a broader perspective on the fact that where we are today doesn't have to be where we go. It doesn't have to be our path forward in the following sense. I think both the extremes who speak the loudest and get the most airtime on the left and right are misguided. On the right side of the extreme, I think there's too much of a willingness to demonize and tribalize, and reject facts. Actually, not take into account reality. On the extreme left side, there's a willingness to throw out all our institutions because it's not perfect, and because we still have, um, uh, non-just systems in some ways. Things aren't perfectly just. There's a willingness to throw out the baby with the bathwater and break it all down, as you saw on campuses so often. I think both are really problematic. I think the idea is to embrace these three aspects of our secret sauce and engage in a way that can be different from the way we engage today. And that takes courage, it takes understanding, it takes a fortitude and resilience. And that's what I try to encourage young people to think about today.